guys all for coming tonight. It's kind of like a collaboration between like the Well House, Alt Pro, and then whoever else is interested. Basically, Christopher Gardner, he's a professor here, does research on nutrition at the Center for Prevention. Wait, what's it called again?
Stanford Prevention Research Center.
That place. But he gives this really awesome talk on proteins that he gave with the Rethinking Meat class last spring. And I thought it'd be really cool to kind of like share that with everyone here. So please take it away.
Okay, and it's not going to be that talk. It's going to be really just a protein talk, right? Wait.
Yeah.
I can't remember what I did for Rethink Me. Okay, but
protein talk. Yeah.
we're going back. So this is actually a funny talk for me to give. So my job as a nutrition scientist has been a feeder and a bleeder, I think. So for about 25 years I've been here, and I've given people garlic, soy, antioxidants, vegan diets, weight loss diets, and I typically have them sign up for some kind of blood draw and we see what happened to their cholesterol, or insulin, or glucose, or something like that. And I actually never studied protein at all, but I became involved with this group called the Menus of Change, which was a collaboration between the Harvard School of Public Health and the Culinary Institute of America. And they created 24 principles of the Menus of Change. So if you've ever eaten at Arriaga Family Dining Center and gone in and seen this huge infographic, I helped with the 12 on the right, and other people did the 12 on the left. And so there were a bunch of principles that they thought, these are things chefs can use that will never go away. These are things all the nutrition scientists agree on. And they took the 12 principles and they tried to do different things with them and tried to promote these to McDonald's, Unilever, Aramark, all kinds of food industry folks. And then at one point they tried to see, what kind of themes would be cross-cutting. And they came up with this idea for the protein flip. And they have an awesome infographic if you ever want to see it on the protein flip. And it's basically one picture with a big steak in the middle, and then 6 pictures with sort of global fusion of flavor alternatives that are grains and beans with seared vegetables and small amounts of beef. And so the idea was, instead of having a big thing of meat with sides of veggies, you'd have a big thing of grains and beans and veggies and sides of meat, a condiment, a sauce, a little bit on top. And they got a little nervous, and they said, people are going to freak out that they're not getting their meat, and we're having this annual conference. Christopher, will you give a talk will you give Protein 101? Will you just give us the basics? And I said, sure, how many minutes do I have? And they said, 8. I said, shit, 8? I teach this at Stanford. It takes me like 4 hours. I can have 8 minutes. Okay, so I made this 8-minute thing, and their jaws were on the floor after. They said, oh my God, that was so cool. Come back next year and do 20 minutes. And then they asked me next year for 40 minutes. Then they asked me for an hour and a half, and then a sports conference asked me to talk for 2 hours straight on protein. So I've been developing this thing over years, but the funny thing is, this isn't what I do studies on. This all just started out as this is what I learned as a Ph.D. about protein. But then I kept getting asked, and they kept asking me to make more and more slides, and I kept having more and more fun making them. And along the way, I just got lots of positive likes for doing this. So let me just make it as interactive as you want here. Why did you come? Is anybody worried about their protein intake? Has anybody been told they don't get enough protein? Does anybody think it's confusing? Does a doctor or a friend or a sports coach or something tell you you're not getting enough protein? Anybody want to volunteer? Willoughby was told.
As my experience growing up, I've been vegan my whole life, and my pediatrician was always like, how do you get your protein? I'm like, I'm not dead yet, so somehow it's happening.
Same thing as a vegetarian. Pediatrician is always concerned for my well-being.
And medical doctors get no training in nutrition. So I'm actually in the medical school, and I get 4 hours of med students for their entire career. So I have to do proteins, carbs, and fats in 20 minutes. All 3, not just protein. I have to do the whole thing. 20 minutes. Any other stories for coming here tonight? Is there a question you want me to answer? I don't even have to show any slides. I can just answer questions. Do you have specific questions? You don't have to.
Animal protein versus plant protein?
I will so get into that. Yes for that. Sports. I don't think I'll have time for doing this, but I will say toward the end, if we get to it, we just had a master's student finish a study that she showed the results for today. We were going to do this with undergrads, but it was during the pandemic and there weren't enough undergrads around. But I don't know if you know, the grad students were all still here during the pandemic. And so she got 12 runners and 12 resistance trainers to do for 4 weeks each, 2 servings a day of the animal meat, 2 servings a day of alternative meat, and 2 servings, or all day vegan. So you had 4 weeks on each diet. And then she had the runners do a timed 12-minute run to see how far they went. And she had the resistance trainers do push-ups and pull-ups when the gyms weren't open. And then they did chest press and lat pull down on legs when the gyms were open. So if you want to ask, as a stunning finish to all this, I'll tell you what happened. And to sign up, you couldn't be a varsity athlete training for some kind of event. These were just students who are always training. In fact, I think the average was 6 years that they had been running or lifting weights, but it was just recreationally. So we were after that audience, not sort of the elite athlete audience. So I'll get into that later if you want. And I have a lot of slides, and I'm probably going to go through them really fast just so that I spark questions, because I'd rather have you guys ask questions. But stop me anywhere along the way. I'm a very informal speaker, okay? So, and this, I'm actually borrowing this particular version of my talk. Palm Wonderful, who used to just do pomegranates, now they do a ton of pistachio things. I don't know if you knew this. They own tons of pistachio things. And pistachios have pretty good protein in it. So they had this whole conference on how cool pistachios were. And I came to talk about plant protein. So I've been fascinated with how Americans are so obsessed with protein. Everybody seems to think protein is super cool for everything, right? And oh my God, they're just like, this is how they sell stuff now. Protein, protein, protein. I think it's because we confuse the American public about fat and carb. It's good one day, it's bad the next, but we never said anything bad about protein. So I think they decided they would just get obsessed with protein. So what's really sad is how much the US eats in terms of protein compared to everybody else. I'm going to flash through a couple of slides just sort of doing global comparisons. There's the US at the top in 2016. Here's another version where we do plant versus animal. As you can see, the US and Canada is way over here. Have you ever heard that India and Asia and Sub-Saharan Africa are all falling over from protein deficiency? There's some issues, but that's not their main issue in nutrition. So this is one of my favorite slides that I use the most right now because this is a little more up to date, 2018. It's just obscene to me how much more we eat in North America than the rest of the world. It's crazy. Why do we eat that much when everybody, here's the world average over here? And then I hang out a lot with a microbiologist who's really into fiber, feeding the bacteria in your gut. And so one of the crazy things is that we have national recommendations of 30 to 40 grams of fiber a day. Americans eat about half that. He studies the Hadza, this traditional indigenous tribe, that are hunter-gatherer, forager types. They eat more than 100 grams of fiber a day. And the concern is that when people are freaking out about carbs and avoiding carbs, doing keto and stuff, and obsessing with protein, one of the main things they're doing is getting less fiber. Less and less and less fiber for the microbiome. So I think there's some other interesting implications here. Why are people so friggin' obsessed about protein? Does anybody have a clue? Anybody have a brother or sister or an uncle who said, I eat all this protein because...
Helps build muscle.
Yeah, muscly things are one big thing. Certainly the athletes. They're getting like 3 chicken breasts at our Yoga Family Dining Center. Make sure they get enough protein. Other things, why does everybody think protein is so cool? The other thing that's weird for me is when somebody goes someplace, go to Asian Box or something like that where you're getting, okay, what do you want? Rice or lettuce as a base? And what vegetables do you want? And what protein do you want? Instead of calling it food, they call it protein. I don't know if you've ever noticed this. Okay, you want some veggies and greens and this, and do you want protein? And I have a friend who says, dude, I got plenty of protein in here. Why do I want protein on my protein? So people are obsessed with protein. So this is the protein 101 part. okay? And it's pretty funny how few people understand this part. This is from 2005. It goes back to some protein studies. I actually got my Ph.D. at Berkeley. And on the 5th floor of Morgan Hall in Berkeley, they used to take conscientious war objectors from Vietnam and do crazy things to them to figure out their protein status. Put them in blue zoot suits and lower their protein to 0 and raise it back up and vacuum the zoot suits and collect all their poop and pee and snot and everything so they knew all the protein going in and out. And they figured out how much protein people need in a disgusting way that you'll never do. We actually don't have a simple way to know what your protein requirement is. You'd have to do this crazy set of tests. But they did it for you. And as happens in many things, there's a normal distribution, and some people need a lot, some need a little. Most people are in the average area, and it looks something like this. And so this is true not only of protein, but of other vitamins and minerals. For nutritional guidelines, we come up with this distribution and figure out what the estimated average requirement is. Okay, now what would happen if I got everybody to eat the estimated average requirement, which seems like a pretty reasonable value? How many people would be deficient if everybody ate the average? Just by math.
90%.
Half of the people would be deficient. So why would you recommend that? So instead of recommending that, all the recommended daily allowances, I'm guessing you've heard RDAs as you grew up somewhere. So most people don't get this. The RDAs are 2 standard deviations above the estimated average requirement. This is a key concept that most people don't get. I feel like most Americans think, well, the RDA is this. I'm guessing I might be higher. Then just in case, I'm going to go higher than that to be safe. But the interesting thing is, if everybody were to get the RDA, how many people would exceed their requirement? What would be the percentage?
50%.
97.5%. Right? Who's to the left of the blue line? It's 97.5. Actually, when I do research studies and I'm figuring out how much are people eating, I have to give them their results back at the end after they've filled out all their diet records. And some people write your back saying, oh, Professor Gardner, oh my God, I'm only getting 90% of the RDA. Am I going to die? I say, no. If you're getting 90% of the RDA, chances are you're getting more than your requirement. And it just doesn't click in their head, right? And I understand why it doesn't click. But it's really set up this way so that when I write a research paper, if I'm trying to estimate how many people might actually be deficient, I look at how many people are below the EAR, the estimated average requirement. I don't look to see how many are below the RDA. Because most of the people below the RDA are in this area, and they're already meeting or exceeding their requirements. Does that make sense? Okay, so this is the fun that I was having with people in my 8-minute talk. They just never heard anything like this. So if you want to figure out yours, here's the EAR and the RDA for you. Probably do pounds, not kilograms, so I put both in there. Can you find yourself? Okay, and then we have data on how much Americans eat. This is from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey, and they eat double the estimated average requirement for the RDA. It's actually pretty hard to eat less than that. I've had nephrologists try to design low protein diets for their patients with kidney problems, and they struggle to get people to eat 0.8 grams per kilogram per day, which is the RDA, which exceeds the requirement of 97.5% of the population. It was fun. I was in a job talk with a nephrologist talking about how hard it was to get to this extremely low protein diet. And I said, do you understand the RDA is 0.8 grams per kilogram per day? And they had no idea. But they said, they're eating double that. I'm having a really hard time cutting their protein in half to get them to 0.8 grams per kilogram per day. I thought that was very amusing. Okay. So what happens if you do get too much protein? So little participation here. And I'm going to go on a sideline for a minute. So let's say you ate more fat than you could use today, and you were going to store it. Does anybody know where you would store it and how much you could store? Anybody want to take a guess? Gabe's got his stomach. Anybody else? Anybody going to store it in their butt? A liver, you could have a fatty liver, but you really don't want a fatty liver. It's actually mostly due to carbohydrates, but let's not go there. Fat you can store under your arms, in your jowl, everywhere. You know how much fat you can store? Endless, infinite capacity for storing fat. You've seen some really heavy people, it's mostly excess adiposity. Okay, move over to carbs. So let's say you're eating carbs today, you ate more than you needed for the day. Can you store it? Where would you store it? How much would you store? Is anyone a runner? Anyone know a runner? Okay, so when would your carb stores run out in a marathon? Yeah, so like 20 miles in, 4 hours in. This is true in runners, right? You bonk. You have to have some goo along the way. So you use up all the excess glycogen in your muscles and your liver storage, and your carb storage is completely shot. So when you eat more carbs than you can store in your liver and your muscle, it gets turned to fat. Okay, so I did all this to set you up with, given that everybody's eating more protein than they need, where do they store it and how much do they store? Most people can't answer that question for me. They kind of know about the carbs and the glycogen, they kind of know the fats in the belly. Nobody has any clue where the protein is stored or how much. So anybody want to try?
They don't.
They don't! There's no function, there's no storage depot for protein. It's all functional. So basically you'd make fingernail, hair, muscle, enzymes, hormone, you'd make all the things you need. And then this isn't like at midnight it cuts off and you convert it, but it's sort of over the course of the day. If you have more than you need for all those things, it takes the nitrogen off and it converts it to carbs and fat. So it's all functional, there's no storage, but it's easily turned into carbohydrate and fat, but you have to break the nitrogen off, because the unique thing about amino acids compared to carbs and fats is the ammonia group. And you have to turn that into ammonia and get it out of your kidneys. Now I actually know a couple nephrologists who haven't really found any adverse effects. They've got some athletes eating way more protein than they need and they're spilling all kinds of ammonia into their urine. It does actually suck some calcium out when it goes. It's hard to make a point that you suck out so much calcium that your bones go hollow. It doesn't really seem to happen, but if you have impaired kidney function, they will definitely get you to lower your protein. But it doesn't seem to cause impaired kidney function as far, so I want to give credit to that. So our bodies are super resilient and they'll do it. I'm not sure that's the downside. I think the downside is if you're having that much protein, you're not getting fiber and you're not getting carbs and you're not getting some other things. So there isn't anything inherently bad to that extra protein. We all have the capacity to convert it. But why would you do that when you could have just eaten the carbs? Any questions? This is a big point. A lot of people that I give this talk to had no idea. So this is one of their stumbling blocks right here. Want me to expand on anything there? Yeah?
So for someone interested in the traditional thing for weightlifters is bulking, what do you suggest?
Yeah, so working out. So if you want to, you know, it's this silly idea. Okay, I'm going to pound protein, I'm going to sit on the couch and watch TV. Oh, this is so cool, my muscles. No, they're not growing. So the only way to make your muscles bigger is to rip them down and build them back up again. And protein is not the limiting factor.
Any dietary changes you suggest then?
Getting enough energy. So athletes are eating more. There's actually a guy I know who teaches some nutrition classes around here who's a recreational power lifter. He power lifts for fun. He doesn't even compete. He just bench presses 400 pounds for fun. And he's got some slides that when you have too much protein, it actually changes your testosterone ratio and makes it harder to put muscle on. So I've heard him give this talk that you don't want to do it'll actually hurt you to get excess protein for your muscle.
You just eat a normal balanced diet.
Like scale.
And so, well, one of the things is, so athletes that are working out, so I showed you a slide of what the National Health Examination Nutrition Survey shows for the average American. Average American doesn't work out that much. That's the protein level at the calorie level they eat. I had a TA who was on the Rose Bowl football team. He was eating 6,000 calories a day and getting 300 grams of protein a day without trying, because he was getting 6,000 calories a day. So in terms of sort of bulking up, you wouldn't have to. If you were working out that hard and you were supporting your caloric level, it would be almost impossible not to get the protein you need. Okay? Thoughts? No? Just
A lot of people suggest you eat huge amounts of carbohydrates. Just a lot of carbs. Is that bullshit?
So you can carb load, but only up to a point. So you can replete the glycogen in your muscle and liver. And you can, for those of you who are runners probably know this, you can sort of give yourself an edge, but pretty soon it just gets turned into fat. It's just a calorie thing. In the end, it's fat.
What's the exercise level at which like the RDA requirements are set? Like how many minutes a day? Like I know that like there's different intensities and stuff, but like
Recommended amounts of activity?
or no, I think you were saying that like the protein. Sorry, I might have misinterpreted this. The protein levels were like set at a particular activity level.
No, so in the protein community, there, if you look at this, it'll say instead of 0.8 grams per kilogram per day, it'll say 1.2 to 1.7 or 8. There's one that says over 2 grams per kilogram per body weight per day is harmful. It's really easy to get over. The football players are way over 2 grams per day per kilogram body weight. If you were to track it all accurately, it would be over. So, yeah, it's sort of double the RDA. But my argument is the American public already eats double the RDA. And so as the athletes are eating more calories, they're eating double the RDA and more on top of that. Okay? All right, let's see. Okay, so this part I'll go really fast. This is just some advice to eat less meat, more plants for your general health. Skip this. This is a great publication of 37 authors across 17 countries who said we should have a planetary health diet. And if I broke it all down into plant, animal, and it's way more plant than animal. Actually, the American Heart Association just came out with new guidelines this last week, and for the very first time, one of their recommendations is to move the protein sources to plant sources of food. Yay, American Heart Association. Okay, so people freak, oh my God, protein, how if you move it to plants? Okay, so I think I have a quiz in here. Okay, quiz question. Let's talk about those amino acids. Wait a sec, there's 20 of them. There's 9 essential ones. Oh God, I remember this from middle school, from high school. There's 11 non-essential. Okay, so if I'm gonna get it from, there's something about this. So which of these do you think is right? Plants don't have protein. All plant foods are missing some of the essential amino acids. Some plant foods are missing some of the essential amino acids. Or all plant foods have all 20 amino acids, essential and non-essential. Skip number 1, that's not true. Who's up for 2? Who picks number 2? Who picks number 3? Who picks number 4? 4 is right. I'll show you. What is really funny is I got asked to give this talk at a dietetics conference. There were 500 dietitians in front of me. And I gave this quiz. The 4 senior dietitians in the front row all picked 4. And 496 dietitians behind them picked 3. It's their freaking field. And they all picked the wrong answer. Okay, but I've never really seen anybody present this the way that I'm going to present it to you. And I kind of know why. I think it seems like a myth. So I've had a lot of success sort of thinking of amino acids like a Scrabble game. Okay, so go with me on the Scrabble game here. So these are the 20 amino acids in egg. There's I don't know why I have dots there. Something happened with my presentation. So this is glutamate and glutamine, then asparagine, then aspartate, or aspartate, and then here's all the other ones. There's sort of a particular order. Technically, we need the least methionine, tryptophan, and cysteine, and we need the most of these over here. So think of a Scrabble game. I'm sure you played Scrabble at some point or another. It's 100 tiles. There's 26 letters of the alphabet. So when you play Scrabble, you get 4 of each letter, right? 100 tiles, 26 letters of the alphabet. Does that sound right? 4 of each. Not even close. That's not what Scrabble is like, right? Scrabble, you get way more E's and R's and very few X's and Y's and J's, okay? You don't get 4 of each letter. It's more like this. So think of amino acids like Scrabble letters. You need more of some, and less of others as you're building out all the hormones and enzymes and hair and fingernails and things like that, okay? So, if you were to think of egg and salmon and chicken and protein and beef and pork, all of these are in the same order each time. The idea is you always need more of the ones on the left and less of the ones on the... It's very consistent. It's not always the same. But humans are pretty much the same, and we need those all for all the things that we build. And so you would want to eat them in the same proportion. So it's one thing if you need 40 grams of protein to eat 40 grams of protein. It's another thing to make sure the proportions of those amino acids in the 40 grams are correct. If the proportions weren't right, you would need more than 40 grams because you weren't getting the proportions right. Does that make sense? Okay, so one of these is rice, one's black beans, peanuts, broccoli. Can anybody guess which one is which? Here's all sort of the missing ones. It's a trick question. This is rice, black bean, peanut, protein, broccoli. All frigging plants have all frigging 20 amino acids. Okay? Just pisses me off. I can't tell you how many times I read this thing that, oh, get quinoa. It has all 9 essential amino acids. All the fucking plants. They all have the 9 essential amino acids. It's like basic plant science. Where did this idea come up that they're missing? They're not missing, but there is something to it. Lysine tends to be in the wrong proportion in grains, and methionine and tryptophan tend to be in the wrong proportion in beans. So let's pick a weird day, and you need 40 grams of protein, and all you ate was rice all day. You ate enough rice to get 40 grams of protein, which is a crap load of rice. It would be an insane amount of rice. If you got 40 grams of rice protein and required 40 grams of protein for your health, you wouldn't have enough. Because you wouldn't have enough lysine. And as soon as it ran out, you wouldn't be able to use the others. So I'll just bring up my kid Zachary. I'm playing Scrabble with him. We're getting to the end of the game. And he says, oh, this awesome word. I'm going to get like 50 points for it. I'm just missing one letter. I said, you can't play the Scrabble word if you're missing a letter. You get no points. You have to have all the letters. No, Dad, I'm really close. Can I have the 50 points? Well, you could, but you'd be faking the game. You have to have all the letters in Scrabble to make the word. You have to have all the amino acids to make these. Proteins come in sizes of 3 amino acids to 50,000. There's only 20 amino acids. If you need 100 or 1,000 amino acids in a specific protein, you need them all. As soon as one is missing and your tRNA or loading your mRNA, it stops. Protein synthesis stops because you don't have them all. So this would be important if you were only getting 40 grams of protein a day. It's not important if you're getting 80 or 120, because then everything is there in excess. Does that make sense? So I made a little heat map. Here's a bunch of animal foods. I don't know how legible that is at the top. But here's all the other ones. So just to show you I wasn't cherry picking foods. These are all the essentials. These are all the non-essentials. Is it striking how bad the plant protein is, or is it striking how similar it is to the animal protein? I've never really seen before me anybody present it like this. I find this pretty compelling, that it's more similar than different. If you wanted to pick the ones that were low, see the beans are low in methionine and the grains are low in lysine? But interesting, beans are a little high in lysine and grains are a little high in methionine. And there's this old thing about complementing your proteins. So for those of you who are vegetarian, I'm sure you've heard of complementing your proteins and eating beans and rice at the same time. It's honestly not that big a deal. Unless you need 40 grams and you get 40 grams over the course of the day. If you get 80 or 100, it doesn't matter. You have way extra. So what I like to liken this, forget that. There's the lysine having a little extra methionine, there's the beans having a little extra lysine. So I'm picturing like having lost in my Scrabble game an L and an M along the way. And I have a friend who isn't playing anymore, and they have a bag of Scrabble letters. Hey, you can have my bag. I say, awesome. And they say, oh, but shit, I'm missing an L and an M also. So both bags are low, but I have 2 bags. Okay, so now I can replete my bag with the missing L&M. Haven't you ever got to the end of Scrabble? It's like you have a bingo at the end and there's no frigging place to put it, right? God, I got a bingo, there's no place to put it because the board is full. That's like making all your muscle and hair and fingernails. Oh, I got these extra amino acids, what do I do with them? Nothing. You can't store them, you can't make more of that stuff. You turn it into carbs and fat. So I don't know if you like my Scrabble analogy, but I've been having fun with that. So, yes, you could get more grams of protein. Question?
Yeah, just before you move on, it was on that one that had like all the different like the fruits and the.
Do you want me to go back?
Yeah, you kind of.
I need Gabe to help me go back because I can't go back.
But the fruits is like a very different picture to the others. So I was wondering if you like recommend highly against.
Oh, I'll go one forward. So here, I'm a raspberry slut. I will do anything for raspberries. Raspberries are horrible. Just to pick one. So they're not all the same. Is that part of what you were getting at? The fruits.
Yeah, so like say someone eat like a very high fruit diet.
Yeah, I would not be a fruitarian. Interestingly, wait, but let me tell you, we just had homecoming weekend, and this guy approached me, and they have a conference of fruitarians. And they have an 80-10-10 diet. They eat 80% fruit and 10% other things and 10% other things. And one of them just placed 5th in the Boston Marathon. Swears he only eats fruit. I don't believe it. But why would he lie? So apparently he placed 5th in the Boston Marathon. He's been eating nothing but fruit. They have an annual conference of fruitarians. I would be super concerned. So you're right. I don't think you could just eat fruit. I would never recommend that.
Supposed to be some really good steroids.
Yeah. There's things you're not getting if all you're eating is fruit. But yes, I would say absolutely the other food. Veggies are good. Beans are good. Nuts and seeds are good. Grains are good. Fruits would be the worst. But they're full of antioxidants. They're full of fiber. They're full of other things. So as you're balancing your diet, fruits certainly have a place. I'm never really looking at fruits to provide my main source of protein. But it's not that they provide none. They do have protein. Everything has protein. That's all the essential amino acids. Yes.
I've never looked at like the breakdown for protein isolates. For example, like pea protein.
Oh.
It looks similar to the actual food, just without the carbs and everything else.
Yeah. If they isolate the protein, sure. These are just proportions. So it would look like this. The pea protein isolate, the soy protein isolate should look like this because you've taken the other things out. Which is why I was just getting to the point here to say that was just percent of total. If you want to see total amount of protein, there's way more protein in chicken and beef and egg per calorie. But if you wanted to try to get 40 grams of protein only from edamame, it would be 2 cups, and you would get 40 grams. And if it was broccoli, okay, 10 cups, that would suck. But sometimes I go to these student presentations and say, oh, Professor Gardner, we knew you were a vegetarian, so we got you the veggie platter with ranch dressing. Here's some raw broccoli florets. It's like, oh, gag me, raw broccoli. But I can't eat this without the ranch dressing because it will totally gag me. But if you just steam broccoli, my wife buys these huge things from Costco, organic broccoli from enormous bag, and my family ate half a bag last night and half a bag the night before. Just, baking it a little bit, little olive oil, little slivered almonds on top. Okay, I can't eat 10 cups, but I can eat 2 or 3 cups of broccoli. Okay, and then if it was black beans, it would just be 2.5 cups to get 40 grams of protein. It's really pretty easy to get that much protein. Okay, I think I have some fun graphs for a minute, but I'll stop here. I'm actually going to show you some mixed meals and amino acids. I'm going to show you 4 different mixed meals. But I'll stop for a second. Any of that need more clarification?
I'm curious if you see anything of the effect of like the meat industry in your work, because I'm from Nebraska and there is like a huge organized effort to keep meat as the center of the diet. So
Absolutely.
I'm curious if you see anything like that.
Oh, huge lobbying power. Sorry. The egg board, the pork, the poultry, Cattlemen's Association, massive lobbyists saying all this stuff about it all the time. Dairy Council is super famous for providing free nutrition information to schools for 50 years. We'll give you a thing and tell you that everybody should have 2 glasses or 3 glasses of milk a day as part of a healthy diet, and we're going to give you free nutrition information. BS. That was really biased. How many people are lactose intolerant? You don't actually need dairy. There's 70% of the population in the world is lactose intolerant, and plenty of people do fine without any dairy. So there's nothing in beef that you can't get in other foods. So yes, I think the lobbying power is hugely problematic. Okay, let me give you some practical meals, see if this is fun. Then I'll be almost done, then I'll be happy to leave it open for question. Okay, I had fun doing this. I work with a lot of dietitians, and so I had them look up these foods in databases and give me a breakdown of 4 different diets. So here's the standard American diet that we call SAD for short. And tell me, do you think this is reasonable? Look at the breakfast with some string cheese snack. Look at the lunch. There's a mocha frappuccino. There's a cheeseburger, fries, and Coke. And there's some ice cream. Is that crazy? Or could that be the American diet? Okay, and I intentionally made this 2,500 calories. We can get into this discussion later, but people tend to underreport their calories. I have some data that I'll be happy to talk about later where women on average eat 2,300 calories a day and men on average eat close to 3,000 calories a day. And when they come in our studies, they all underreport. And I can give you the data that I have of why I think they eat that much. So I picked 2,500 calories. How many grams of protein can you guess that might be? Take a stab. 50, 75, 100, 125, 150, 200.
125.
125.
150.
150.
200.
200. It's 125. Nice. Well done. Okay, and remember, recommended daily allowance is about 50 or 60 a day. This is more than double the RDA. That's what I think Americans eat that. And I tweaked this, I manipulated it, so it would be 85% animal and 15% plant, because that's what some USDA databases say is true of the American diet. Okay? And it's 20% of the calories, which is very common. In all our diet records, we usually have people at about 18% of calories from protein, so 20 wouldn't be a stretch. Okay, so let's see what would happen now. So here's all the 40 amino acids, and I broke them out into essential and non-essential in alphabetical order. That's how much you probably need if you were average, and I know you're all Stanford students, and you're above average, but I'm thinking your protein requirement is average, okay? So you need more of some and less of others, and if you got 125, it would look like that. So basically, for each bar, you would go up till the white part was done, and then everything in red would get broken down to carbon fat. Does that make sense? Okay, but you wouldn't break down hardly any tryptophan right here. You're getting 3 times the tryptophan you need, but you wouldn't break much down. You break down tons of glutamate and glutamate, because there's just more of it in there. So you're not breaking down the same amount of different amino acids, but you easily have enough. And do a little thought experiment. Let's say you're the outlier in the crowd, and you don't need 40 grams a day. You need 60. So make each one of the bars 50% taller. Are you fine? If you go 50% taller on any of the white bars, are you in trouble? No, there's plenty of room in the red, right? Okay, so now let's do a modified SAD diet. I made it a little better here. Now I got a chef salad. I got an apple and peanut butter. I put some vegetables in with the beef. Okay, and I got rid of some meat. I added some plants. How many grams of protein do you think I got? Oh my God, there's plants in there, so it doesn't have protein now. So, oh my God. No, it's actually almost 125 grams of protein. Okay, I did that on purpose, 2,500 calories. This time, I made it 50% plant and 50% animal protein. So now what would it look like? Now it would look almost the same as last time. Because I just showed you that the plants have almost the same distribution of amino acids, especially if you only shifted it to 50-50, if that makes sense. So now you break down 84 grams and convert it to carbs and fats. And again, if any of the white bars were 50% higher, because you needed 60, not 40, you'd be fine if you are an outlier. Are you with me so far? Okay, now I've got an enlightened protein shift. Oh, I've got a veggie omelet. I've got a salad, big salad that's got some chicken. Oh my God, I have a vegan dinner. I have tofu veggie stir fry. I threw in some raspberries for me and some dark chocolate. Okay, this one only has 90 grams of protein. 14% of the calories are from protein. And I still have a 50-50 split of plant and animal. But I have less protein. That's still like double the RDA though. So what happens when I get to my individual need? It's still like that. All the things in green I'm busting down and turning to carbon fat. Make any of the white bars 50% higher in case you're at sort of the extreme end of a requirement. You're fine. So I'm still going to break down 50 grams, more than half of it, and turn it into carbs and fat. Okay, so let's go one step forward, and here's my plant-forward diet. I'm getting 2,500 calories a day, but it's vegan. There's no animal products in here whatsoever. I'm still getting 78 grams of protein in my all-vegan diet. It's 100% plant protein. Here's where the bars are. Okay, make any of the white bars 50% higher. Oh, I'm not okay. Oh shit. Now, if I had a 40 gram requirement, I'd be okay for cysteine, but if I was at the upper end, I'd be in trouble, right? And the thing is, I'd use up all the cysteine, and I'd have plenty of glutamine and aspartate and other things left. I can't just swap them in because I'm missing cysteine. I'm done. I'm actually not going to make some of my hormones, not going to make some of my enzymes, and I'm in trouble. So at a point, it's going to be trouble. But if I'm average, and a lot of you again are average, that's what average means. For protein requirement, you would be fine here. But I'd be breaking down very little methionine and cysteine, and so I'd have to be careful there. Okay, I hope that was fun. I spent a lot of time on those foods. Is that a very practical application to kind of show you? It's not just total protein, it's proportion. Proportion doesn't matter unless your total intake is getting closer and closer to your actual requirement. Except in America, people eat way more protein than the RDA. That's sort of the main take home. I hope that made sense. Yes?
What's the breakdown of the excess protein? Like, is it going to mostly carbs and then fats? Like,
Great question. So where does the protein go? Carbs, fats. Always carbs first. So you're always going to replete your glycogen first, but it's not hard to do. You quickly replete the glycogen in your liver and your muscles. And so unless you just ran that marathon and it's all gone. How many days do you run a marathon? Okay, not very many. So for the most part, you'll have some glycogen stored already. So most of it will go to fat, probably.
got it.
So this is just a thing this is from a textbook. So read the right on your own. And basically, unless you're just eating crap, it would be next to impossible not to meet your protein requirement, even with no meat, fish, poultry, eggs, or cheese. This is a nutrition textbook saying this. Okay? It's a myth. It's a big old myth. Oh, Gabe, I might need help. I'm not pointing to it anymore. Okay, thanks. Okay, so I should let you ask questions. I'm just going to fly through these. This is my deal with the menus have changed. Ooh, remember I pointed out that picture? I wrote this all up in a big paper after getting asked to give this talk so many times. So I have it all now in a paper, everything I just said. Plus we hooked it to the environment. And we said, okay, this is one of my staff members who took these food pictures. Upper left is not intended to be breakfast. I know you see eggs there. It's supposed to be all the main sources of protein. So we got eggs, dairy, and meat. We have nuts, beans, and grains. Those are the main sources of protein in your diet. This is 90 grams worth of protein. I just picked that number because of some of the stuff that we've been playing with. I made it 85-15 animal plant. It ends up being 800 calories. That means you guys are going to eat another 1,000 or 2,000 calories more. All that had protein too, so you're actually going to get more protein. So we tried 2 shifts. One would be keeping the same grams of protein, but instead of 85-15, we make it 60-40. This one was just eating 25% less protein and keeping the 85-15 the same. And this was the double. This is eating less protein and shifting. So I'll stop here one more time. This is sort of the standard American diet. Any questions? Looks like this. 90 grams of protein right there. This one, 25% less protein, now you're 67.5. That's still way over the RDA. 60-40. I didn't make it vegan. You can see I just got rid of some eggs, some dairy, and some meat. I actually didn't increase the grain. I think Americans eat too much friggin' grain, so I left the bread the same. I only did the beans and the nuts, and people freak out about fat, so I only did 1 ounce of nuts, and all the rest was made up of beans. Does that make sense? So it's almost the same number of calories when I do this. Okay, so what happens when I make this 20-25 shift? I'm going to skip this because here's the conclusion. If you did it, you'd still exceed the RDA. The plant protein quality is much higher than people think, so you would not be in trouble. If you scale that to 300 people in the US, you would decrease greenhouse gas emissions from the food sector by 40%, which would be, just that one shift, 8% of the pledged greenhouse gas reduction in the Paris Agreement. Just that one shift. No trucks, no cars, no other things. And it would be 3 trillion gallons less of water to grow food. So we were trying to make a case that Americans are too obsessed. They eat too much protein. They eat too much animal protein. You don't have to go vegan or vegetarian, but if you did this 25-25 shift, it would not only help heart disease, cancer, and diabetes, it would help the environment. Happy to share the paper with anybody. That's our paper and my cool colleagues. And I'll just stop there so I can take questions. I have more slides, but that's my point. I've been having a blast doing this, and I actually don't do protein studies. I do more things about cholesterol and blood pressure and heart disease risk factors, but I had fun doing that.
Are protein shakes a waste of time?
Yes, protein shakes are a total waste of time. My son, oh, this is so sad. I have many sons. I have 4 sons. One's 27 now, and he had one of those big cylinders of protein powder. And I gave him my whole rant. He kept he's going to the gym, taking the protein powder. Went on the web, found all kinds of people to support what I was saying. Said, "Dad, you were right." You asshole, I'm a professor at Stanford, and I told you this. I still bought that freaking thing of protein powder. So now he's a total convert, goes to the gym, very buff.
Does he do anything special?
Vegetarian. No,
Does he
cooks. He just cooks, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
So,
1, 2, 3.
I know you're mentioning like with the balance, like if you're on like the really high tail of like the protein and amino acid needs, then like with the doubling you might not get what you need. What would like a patient see if that was happening to them? They weren't getting enough of the amino acids.
Yeah, so the first thing that you'd see is muscle wasting. So your body would prioritize your heart muscle and your lung muscle. It'll prioritize enzymes and hormones that you need to regulate metabolism. But you'd start losing something like arm and leg muscle, which you don't need to survive.
Yeah.
That would go first. So you lose muscle mass, and there are breakdown products of muscle that you can check in blood to see if you are wasting. So you would be losing weight and losing muscle.
Would you say that athletes just need to eat more calories in general rather than like a higher proportion of protein?
Yes, all they have to do is eat calories. Yes, it would be very hard for them not to get enough protein. There's a guy named Stuart Phillips who has a big meta-analysis who says, oh, athletes need at least 1.6 grams of protein per day. And beyond that, it doesn't help them at all. So I wrote him an email, and I'll cut to the chase, and he said, in all my studies, once I pulled them all together, muscle mass and strength is 91% working out, and 9% focusing on your protein. He said it's like a rounding error. You just need people to work out.
What do you recommend for eating protein throughout the day? Like
Oh, yep.
And also, like, does it influence like when the body decides that I'm being
So I actually don't have a good answer to that question. So there's a lot of people who, yeah, spread it out over the day, have some at breakfast, lunch, and dinner, but even more specific to that is just before your workout and just after your workout. And that's the part I really don't know. Right, they have fancy sports drinks that you have afterward, and then there's a silly thing about chocolate milk is just as good as all the sport drinks, which is true. When they put it together, basically chocolate milk has sugar, and after workout, sugar is good for you. That is the one-time sugar is good for you. And the chocolate milk has protein. So you're getting sugar and protein after a hard workout, not a lame, I walked 3 blocks and I came back home and watched more TV. A really hard workout, there is something to that protein timing. But I would say, yeah, I would not have, I think one of the US's problems is sugary breakfast cereals, refined grain, with orange juice, with jam, on white bread. It's just carbs on carbs on carbs. Add some yogurt, add some eggs, have a veggie omelet or something. Yeah, we should have probably more protein in the morning.
Also, a follow-up question on that. When you're talking about carbohydrates, how long does it usually take to be, like if you don't use them, to be converted into veg fats?
So how long does the carbs take?
Yeah.
Oh, same day, because you'll quickly replete your glycogen. And if you really are getting a lot of simple carbs, it causes fatty liver, which sort of came up in the beginning. So if you're really overdosing on carbs, a lot of them are going to the liver to get converted to fat and delivered to adipose tissue, but it can cause fatty liver. You definitely don't want them to do that. So, and the key there is if you're getting whole intact grains, so think about sugar is the worst, and then white bread, not much better. Whole grain bread, better because it has nutrients, but it was made out of flour. So I don't know if you've heard of a thing called the glycemic index, which is how fast the carbohydrate gets into your blood. The glycemic index of whole grain bread is the same as white bread. That might sound disappointing, but think about how you make bread. You ground it into a flour, right? There's no digestion left. So even though it's whole grain bread and there's more nutrients in it, the carbs go really fast into your blood. At home, I just made this week, and I'm sorry I didn't bring it, I didn't have enough for everybody. I make a kick-ass wheat berry salad. And it's the whole wheat kernel. It's not ground into anything. And I have, what do I have? Apples, pecans, pomegranate, molasses, celery, red bell pepper, scallions, olive oil, lemon juice. It's sort of got savory and dried fruit chopped into it. Super hearty, very chewy. You have to chew up the wheat kernels, or steel-cut oats, or barley in a soup. So the timing there would be important. So if you're having white bread, if you're having jam and toast, if you're having orange juice for carbs, very different than whole intact grains. For beans, most of the beans aren't really enough unless you get garbanzo flour, but you could have hummus, get a 3-bean soup, you could have some kind of Mexican dish with beans or refried things. That'd take a lot longer to get there. And so then you'll be using it over the course of the day while you digest it and get it into your bloodstream. So timing and how intact, what kind of food matrix the carbs are in will get digested and be made available more slowly.
What do you think of replacing meat with like plant-based meat as opposed to like legumes and beans?
So I'm not a huge fan of the plant-based alternative meats, except I've been trying to get people to eat less meat for a really long time, and for most people I haven't made a dent. Well, it doesn't matter how effervescent I can be up here and how many graphs I show. The beef company is beating me out with their advertising and their marketing. So I'm open to anything, and a lot of people are trying Impossible and Beyond Meat. It's fascinating. And not only that, Tyson now makes their own fake meat, and all these other companies are making fake meat, and it's taking off in the market. It's still just a rounding error. If you look at the data, it's still mostly real meat. But it's this opportunity. So I'm watchfully waiting to see what happens with this. We actually did a study with Beyond Meat, and to be, full disclosure here, total industry shill, Beyond paid for the study. I took the money. We went to San Francisco and we got organic, free-range, pasture-raised, regenerative farming, good quality meat. And we had 40 people have 2 servings a day of Beyond Meat and 2 servings a day of red meat for 8 weeks. And I know that I made an environmental impact on this switch, but people were saying, oh, the fake meat has high saturated fat because of the coconut oil they use in it to make it taste like meat, and they have high sodium, and it's ultra processed, and so it's probably the salt's going to cause blood pressure, the saturated fat's going to raise cholesterol, the ultra processed is going to make people gain weight. So our participants on the plant meat lost weight, lowered their LDL cholesterol, blood pressure did not go up at all, and they lowered a heart disease risk factor called trimethylamine oxide. So 3 positive things happened in the plant meat for health, and 1 nullifying for blood pressure, which did not go up. And the animal meat didn't do better in any of them. So I've kind of contributed to this conversation with 1 study. It's the only one that I know of so far to pit plant-based meat versus real meat. If you change the dose, change the population, change the duration, change the outcome, something else might happen. And really, I don't feel like an industry shill. I feel pretty objective, but I'll out myself. That's where the money came from. So, and then Gabe?
If the required protein for the recommended clinic is still like so low, like 40 to 20 dish, why are fitness studies still coming out with that? I've seen like 1.2 to 1.6 grams per body weight for like to build muscle. Why are they still continuing to advocate for these numbers?
Right, so Chloe's asking why is the athletic community pushing for more? Because people are building muscle. So if you want to put on muscle, so the 0.8 grams per kilogram per day is to maintain.
Okay.
If you wanted to build, it would be more. But I have some silly math for you. You ready for this math? Okay, you ready for this? Would it be ambitious to put 22 pounds of muscle on in 1 year?
Yes.
1 year, 22 pounds of muscle? Anybody ever done that before? Okay, that is 10 kilos. 70% of muscle is water. It's the protein associated with water, just like fat does not, but carbs and protein do. So it's actually only 3 kilos of amino acids that you'd have to accumulate, or 3,000 grams, divided by 365 days of the year. So how many extra grams of protein do you actually need to retain in 1 year, put on 22 pounds of muscle? About 10. Now it's not quite 10, I'm exaggerating a little. If you work out really hard enough to build muscle, you're actually breaking down some protein in your muscle and then rebuilding it. So my recreational powerlifter friend said 15. Do you need 15 grams a day more than you're eating now, or 15 grams a day more than maintenance? You need 15 grams a day more than maintenance. If you're already eating double the RDA, you're already eating way more than 15 grams a day maintenance. So I would kind of argue with this. So that's my simple math of, even though 22 pounds of muscle sounds really ambitious, it's not that many grams of protein per day over the course of a year. It would be really easy. It's not the protein that's holding you back. It's not working out hard enough. Okay?
Building on that, what are some of the other factors besides muscle growth that influence people's required protein amounts? Is it just genetic, or are there other things?
Big people need more. Some people have faster metabolism. Some people are sick and they've got some wound healing to do. Some people have parasites. Some people are other, I don't know what the other sources of loss would be. People just have different rates of turnover. That's why we have a normal distribution and some need high. It's not just size. That's why the protein requirements are written as per kilogram body weight, not just per person. So people are pretty similar. They're not all that different. I wouldn't say there's that many differences. So Golly, and then here.
So I was reading a study recently looking at, it was with pig models, and they were feeding them like regular burgers and then plant-based food. And the point of the study was to see how eating the burger with or without a bun affects like the digestibility of it.
Interesting.
And
Okay.
having an excellent digestibility score to like animals is still excellent, but then plant-based is good, like a score of 86. And I was wondering if there's anything else like beyond just eating protein with bread that affects the digestibility.
Oh yeah, all the things that you mix in the food matrix will delay gastric emptying or speed it up. It'll get in the way when you're trying to absorb nutrients. So I mean, fiber is a great thing, but fiber also binds some of the nutrients and drags them through your system before you've ever absorbed them. So there is a sense of balance through all this. That's why I wouldn't be a fruitarian. And I wouldn't be keto, wiping out carbs. Both of those extremes are ridiculous. The thing that I also find fascinating, and I'm really trying to do in my research now, is to embrace the variability of individuals, because I can give two people the same advice, and they can look me in the eye, and my health educator would say, I am totally doing exactly what you're saying, and they have different metabolic responses. And so part of that is teasing that apart so that you could, I think up at a certain point you have to game your own system, biohack. You have to biohack your own system and say, okay, I tried this and I tried this and this works better. I've had people come up and say, Professor Gardner, I've heard your lectures, I really like them. I have all these health conditions. I started just eating butter and meat and all my health conditions went away. And who am I to look at them and say, I'm sorry, I need you to go out and steel cut oats? Because they just said they were sick, and they switched, and they got better. So I'm very open-minded to different types of metabolism for different people. There isn't one way for everyone to eat, but most people would benefit from eating different than the way Americans eat now. With a shift to more whole foods and more plant-based. Those are the two easiest ones I have. I think there was some, yes, sorry.
What do you think about tofu over other?
So I really like soybeans and edamame and tempeh, which is the whole soybean fermented. So actually first they take the soybean and they make milk, and it loses some fiber and some nutrients and other things. And you make tofu out of soy milk, so you actually lose some things from the soy milk to the tofu. It would have been better to have the soybeans, or the edamame, or the tempeh. And if you say, oh, I didn't realize tofu was missing all that. Well, I'm not going to have that, I'm going to go have a Big Mac. No, that wasn't the point. But I feel like that's what I face when I'm talking to the general public. Oh, I heard Professor Gardner say that tofu doesn't have all the nutrients. I'm skipping that. And the thing they choose is worse. So just in terms of, Asian culture and tofu absorbing the flavors, it's an amazing culinary tool for absorbing flavors. And you can do bizarre texture things with it. I'm really not a dessert fan, but they make some kick-ass tofu cheesecake type things if you've had those. Like, oh my God, I can't believe this is not cream cheese, it's tofu. So I have tofu every week, I'm sure, several times. And soy milk. And I make a lot of things with tempeh. And my kids will eat edamame hand over fist, especially if they get it squirted in their mouth and squirted at each other out of the pot. So you don't just have to eat the whole food, but it would have been better. Fair?
Kind of going off of what you were talking about, could you talk about like a little bit of like what your diet looks like, or like what like you tend to like eat? Or
Yeah.
in terms of the kinds of things that you tend to choose.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty boring for breakfast, so I have steel-cut oats with raspberries and mango and walnuts, like once or twice a week. And I make a big thing of steel-cut oats the night before. I'm not really cooking it. I just bring the water to a boil, and then I have like 4 or 5 days of that. I have muesli with fruit and nuts in it. I have avocado toast with kimchi on it. It's one of my staples. And actually, every other week or so, I'll have some eggs. So I'll have on toast with some other things. So that's my non-vegan days. Every once in a while, going to the farmer's market. For lunch, what did I have today? Oh, today I didn't have much. I played volleyball. Sorry. I had some nuts and chocolate for lunch. For dinner tonight, I had a big salad. One of my staples is just some of the mixed greens. And then I always make a meal out of it. So tonight, what did I have for veggies? I had red bell pepper, carrots, radishes, and celery. And then I added avocado, garbanzo beans, cashews, and Greek olives. What did we make the night before that? I made a cool celeriac dish. So I know you guys have had celery. How many of you have ever eaten celeriac? It's a root. And so you have to take the root of the celery and you have to bake it for like 3 hours in the oven. And then you slice it up. And I put a date sauce on it. And we put it in blanched green cabbage leaves. And so it's like a taco with celeriac and a date sauce on green cabbage leaves. Make a really good gypsy soup, which is basically a butternut squash soup with lots of veggies in it and lots of turmeric, sort of Moroccan spices. This is one of my favorites. So I would say, if I was going to be more general, soups, salads, stir fries, and some kind of, any kind of Mexican dish where it's a corn tortilla and some rice and beans and veggies and hot sauce and avocado, something like that. So the last stuff I make is pretty quick. Let me see what time it is in case I have to go home to my family. Pretty soon. 3 more minutes? How about it? We'll go to 8:45. Is that fair? Or quick, if that's all the question.
What were the results of that study you mentioned at the beginning?
Okay, thank you very much for remembering. Push-ups, pull-ups, chest press, lat pull down, leg press, 12-minute mile, all the same, all 3 phases. So I'm really happy with these results, right? So it really looked, and the protein on the animal meat phase was almost double in the plant meat phase. So I'm really skeptical about the total protein. It was 69 grams a day on the vegan diet, but they only reported 1,800 calories. This is totally bugging me. These weren't just average Americans. So the runners were running on average 20 miles a week, and the lifters were lifting 3 times a week, for an hour. There's just no way they could maintain their weight on 1,800 calories a day. Half men, half women, so we'll give the women a little bit of a break there. But very interesting. They had Garmin watches for the runners. We looked at their VO2 max. So sort of all the performance issues were the same. And we're looking at their diet. So eating pretty healthy animal diet, pretty healthy plant-based, pretty healthy vegan. But they actually got tired of eating the plant-based meat twice a day. So the only real criticism we got was it was really hard to eat alternative meat twice a day. And they felt like their variety wasn't as high, and they didn't. We asked a lot of behavioral questions like how much did you like it, how easy was it to find and buy and expensive and socially. And for the plant-based meats it was down a little for just sort of lack of variety and price and lack of access in some places. But it wasn't a big deal, and the performance was the same across all 4 groups, 24 people. Not an NIH-funded study. This was a master's project. It was run on a shoestring budget, but pretty compellingly the same. And we did the perceived exertion levels of all their workouts. That was the same too. Thanks for asking. We'll try to publish that soon. Not today. It's not going to get in a great journal. Small budget, master's thesis, but we hope to actually use it as pilot data for a bigger thing. I'm actually hoping to do it in the dining halls with undergrads because I have a very good relationship with the chefs, and most of the dining halls have a plant-based alternative meat and have a vegan option and have meat. So if anybody's interested, we're going to try to put something like this together where we talk with some of the chefs in the dining halls and get some regular athletes, that's actually who we're looking for, people who regularly run or regularly lift, and have them for different numbers of weeks, go to the study table, and we'll have all 3 available, and for however many weeks you're supposed to eat one and then the other and then the other, and compare. In a larger study, that would be longer. So yes, I'd really like to make a plug for this thing we have called the Menus of Change University Research Collaborative, where we're trying to get undergrads involved in research that's dining hall related. So I can hook you up, cgardner@stanford.edu to do research projects. We also have a cool new thing called the Plant-Based Diet Initiative, so I'm going to out myself more for being the industry shill. So after I did that study that worked out really well, Beyond Meat gave me $2.25 million to start a plant-based diet initiative on campus. And so we're supposed to be doing, we don't actually have the research money, but we have the infrastructure to do more stuff. And we actually have seed money for pilot projects. And Chloe and Ellie are actually doing seed, and Gabe are doing seed projects with us now that we were able to fund with this money. So come to me for research if you want to do research. Take my human nutrition class if you want every spring. You'll hear part of this same rant again in about week 4 when we get to protein. But I talk about lots of other things. Thanks for having me.